Hello friends, today we will start our lecture with one of the very important tests used in evaluating mechanical properties, and that is tensile test. Okay, so we have already introduced you to the stress and strain, okay, and then we discussed about the elastic part of the elastic behavior of the material. Okay, so when we go to this tensile test, and we will see that what kind of information you get from these. Okay, you will understand that whatever we discussed there is again coming back here, and it is kind of getting integrated, and you will be start appreciating that how we get all these values from a tensile test. Okay, so if you consider the whole mechanical properties as a whole, that what type of mechanical properties are usually of interest to us. There are two colors I have used here. Okay, one is this dark brown and one is blue. Okay, so the first part, okay, properties mentioned in the first part. Okay, basically, so these ones, these are you are going to get from a typical tensile test or tension test. Okay, so this is what you will get from a tension test. So strength of the material. Okay, in that you will have couple of strength, yield strength and ultimate tensile strength, two of the most important strength which we have or which we need, and then you have ductility, toughness and resilience. Okay, then there is another set of properties which is mentioned here. Okay, hardness, impact toughness, creep and fatigue strength. These are not part of the tensile test per se, but some of the properties actually you can get from a very similar kind of test. Okay, hardness is of course very different, but some of the other properties actually the kind of sample or the kind of machine which you use are very similar to what you will get in a tensile test. Okay, so let us start with the tensile test first. Okay, and basically the idea is to understand all these properties, how I can get these properties from the information which I get from the tensile test. So this is the basically the samples which you use for doing tensile test. Okay, one is if you have sheet. So if I have sheet for which I want to know the mechanical properties, so then we have this dog bone or rectangular cross sectional area material sample. Okay, so basically the cross sectional area of this sample is rectangular, and or if you have some kind of a bar, okay, maybe a Tor steel or something like that, then we have this kind of button head with circular cross sectional area. Okay, and in this sample there are few things which you can notice. Okay, that one is what we call as the grip section, okay, which is mentioned here. So this is you can say either sometime people refer to it as shoulder. Okay, so it is like a shoulder kind of thing. So it is either a shoulder, okay, or it is a grip section, and this is the basically either diameter or width of the grip section. Okay, this is where the machine holds the sample. Okay, so if you look at a typical tensile test machine, basically you will have some support system, okay, which is mounted on a base here. Okay, and then there is a unit called cross head. Okay, so you have a cross head here. Okay, and basically there will be some one is going to be stationary, another going to be moving. So suppose if this is moving, then there will be a stationary one in the bottom. Okay, and your sample comes here. Okay, so suppose some arrangements will be there. I am not showing into that details. Okay, so suppose the sample will be like this. Of course, the drawing is not very nice here. Okay, suppose we are able to load by some pin loading. So sometime you will also see that there is a hole here in the sample. So, you can insert a pin and that is how you are going to load the sample. Now, this crosshead is going to move, this is going to apply a strain on the material and the response of the material will be in form of stress, and for measuring the stress there is a part of this machine which is called load cell. Okay. So, load cell will measure the stress of the material, which is basically the response of the material to the strain which we are imposing on that. Okay. And now, you can understand that I can move this crosshead with different velocity v. Okay. So, if I am doing with at a faster velocity, then I am doing at the deformation at a faster rate. If I am moving at a slower speed, then I am doing the deformation at a slower rate. Okay. So, there can be different rates also I can apply to that. Okay. So, this is how a typical tensile testing machine will be. So, basically the machine is going to grip the sample in this region. Okay. There can be different methods to grip. One, as I told you, that you can have hole in the sample and you can insert a pin and then it will be called as pin loading. In some cases you have some kind of gripping section. It is like a clutch kind of thing which you see in automobile, that you have to have some friction which and you have to have a normal force, okay, which grips the sample. Now, one of the most important part of this sample is what we call as the gauge length, okay, which is mentioned here, okay, between 2 points, and there we have also reduced the cross sectional area of the sample. Okay. So, the idea is to reduce the cross sectional area of the sample such that this part of the sample will experience more stress because the cross sectional area is reduced. So, the deformation will be concentrated in this part, and the shoulder part is what we are saying that it should not deform normally. Okay. So, by reducing the cross sectional area, so I am assuming that now the deformation will be concentrated in the gauge section only, okay, and there will be a gauge length, okay, which you can call as something like L naught for argument's sake, and then you will have some diameter or width. If diameter, if it is a round cross section, a circular cross section, and width if it is a rectangular cross section, okay, and this is the distance between the shoulder. Okay. One more important thing you will see here is that when we are reducing the cross section, we are not doing the reduction like this. For example, one way to do that is I can reduce the cross sectional like this also, okay, but this kind of very sharp corner is going to introduce stress concentration in the material. This we will see later on when we will discuss fracture, okay, and your material will fail at this root itself. Okay. So, you are not going to get the representative property of the material, but just some kind of a fracture property of the material because you have a sharp corner here. So, you have to have some kind of curvature here, okay, and the whole standard that how you can prepare this sample is given in again ASTM standard, American Society for Testing and Materials, okay, and the standard name is E8. Okay. So, you can go through that and make your sample accordingly. So, this is what a typical tensile curve will look like. Okay. So, this on the y axis you have a stress, on x axis you have a strain. Okay. So, strain is what you are imposing on the material and stress is your response of the material. So, you will have some linear part, okay, which is what we are going to call as where the elastic deformation is going to take place and Hooke's law will be obeyed. This is already we have discussed. So, this is the, I think this circle has gone little bit too far, okay, actually it should have been some up to here only. So, this actually should be down. So, your elastic part will be up to somewhere here, okay, and then your material will start going into a non-linear kind of dependence of stress into with strain, okay, and that is where we call it as that material has now started deforming irreversibly or there will be plastic deformation. Okay. So, this is I will come back to this again, that why we are plotting this line here, okay, and this is where you will get uniform plastic deformation. So, after yield point, so yield will be where your material started showing the plastic deformation. Okay. So, after that you will have a plastic deformation, in that also we are dividing this deformation into two parts. One is which is what we are calling as uniform plastic deformation. So, during this time if you see these two samples here, okay, this is where initially when the elastic deformation was there, then you can see that the cross sectional area has reduced from here to here and the length has increased, but the cross sectional reduction in the sample is uniform throughout the sample. Okay, same cross sectional area is there throughout the sample. So, in this right now in this case the plastic deformation is uniform throughout the gauge length, okay, during from yield point to where we reach the maximum stress in this stress strain curve, and that maximum stress is called ultimate tensile strength. And after that you start seeing that there is a drop in the tensile curve, or material is showing that it cannot take the load, and there you get the non-uniform plastic deformation. So, now you can see in the gauge length, okay, so this was the initial, this was the cross sectional area before the necking, and now there is a phenomena called necking which has started. So, it look like a neck, so they call it necking. So, at this point, okay, in your sample necking starts, okay, and that is why we are calling this as that now there is a non-uniform plastic deformation. That means the deformation will be concentrated only in this region where the cross sectional area is reduced, and since now the cross sectional area is reduced, my material cannot take the response of the material will be reduced, because I have less amount of material to give the resistance to deformation. Okay. So, now my cross sectional area is reduced, so my material what response it is going to get is also going to be reduced, okay, and that is why you will see that the stress is coming down. Now, when we say that this again we will come back to this discussion when we will discuss about two different type of calculation. One is what we call as engineering stress and another what we call as true stress. Okay. So, there you will again start appreciating that we can have different type of calculation to get the tensile stress strain curve. Okay. And at this point my material will fracture into two parts. Okay. So, now there is no resistance to deformation, okay, because now there is no connection between the two material, they are independent. So, at this point it has fractured, and now my stress strain curve will also stop here, and this is where the I will call it as the material is fractured, okay, and this is the total strain which material is taken. Okay. So, now before going further, okay, I want to discuss two very important type of stress strain curve. Okay. So, one which you can see in an aluminum material, okay, or in one which you can see in steel, plain carbon steel or mild steel. Okay. So, because these two are very important distinctions. Okay. So, let me draw it. So, this is my strain and this is my stress. So, one we have already seen, okay. So, one which is like this. So, you have elastic part, okay, then somewhere the yielding will take place and the plastic part, and you have fracture at somewhere here, okay. So, this is one type of curve, okay. Now, the problem in this particular curve is that you have a linear elastic part and then non-linear plastic part, but where this transition takes place, I am not sure about that point where the yielding in the material has started. Okay. So, to find out the yield strength or yield point in this kind of stress strain curve, okay, what we do is we take a offset on the strain, okay, and this offset is equal to 0.2% or 0.002 strain total in fraction. Okay. So, you take an offset of 0.2% strain, and then you have to plot a line which is parallel to the this linear curve, the elastic part of the elastic portion of this stress strain curve, and wherever it is cutting the stress strain curve, that I will call as my yield strength. Okay. Because I am not sure where this linearity and non-linearity is going, so I will call it as or you sometime call it as 0.2% or offset yield strength or 0.2% proof stress. Okay, there are different names for this. So, this is how you get if you are not sure about it. In steel or mild steel or plain carbon steel, this is even simpler. Okay, the stress strain curve for that is usually like this. So, you have elastic part, okay, and at some point the yielding starts and actually the stress strain curve drops, and then there is some kind of serrations are there, and then it start becoming like this, and then it fractures. Okay. So, very different curve from what you will see in aluminum alloys. Okay. Not all alloys, in some alloys. Okay. Or in different materials you will see this type of curve, in some material you will see this type of curve, where you will see a very sharp yield point. So, in this case defining a yield strength is very easy. So, wherever you get this maximum strength and then there is a very sharp drop. Okay. So, this is very easy to identify that this is my yield stress. So, in case of steel we call this as the upper yield point and then there is a lower yield stress. Okay. So, it drops, then there are some serrations and then it goes into plastic deformation. Okay. So, these are the two different types of stress strain curve you will see generally in books or in some other places. Okay. So, this is for steel and this is for aluminum. In case of aluminum, as I told you, you have to do this 0.2% offset and then plot a line to get the yield strength. Okay. Now, this already we have discussed elastic. There will be two parts of this tensile stress strain curve. Elastic part, okay, that will be recoverable strain. You will have linear dependence of stress on strain and so on, and plastic deformation which is non-recoverable and it will be permanent. Okay. So, now next we will try to see different properties at different stages in stress strain curve. Okay. So, some we have already discussed earlier also, that one property which you will get from a stress strain curve will be elastic modulus, okay, which is basically slope of the linear portion of the stress strain curve. Then you will get the yield point, okay, where stress and strain curve loses linearity or non-recoverable plastic deformation begins. Okay. So, that will be your yield point. Then you will have yield strength or offset yield strength. Okay. As I told you that in the some material where stress strain curve is a continuous curve, okay, you cannot find out the yield strength. So, what we do is we draw a parallel line to the linear relationship between stress and strain at 0.2% offset. The point where this line cuts the graph of stress strain graph is your yield strength. Okay. Then you will have ultimate tensile strength, maximum stress on the stress strain diagram, after which necking starts. Okay. So, up to this point you will have uniform deformation, after this you will have non-uniform deformation. In stress strain curve it is very easy to find out that which is your ultimate tensile strength. So, in the stress strain curve where the slope is becoming 0, that is your that is the strain at which you will have ultimate tensile strength. Then you have fracture strength, stress at which material fractures. Okay. So, very simple, different location of the stress strain curve. I can get, you can understand that I can get so many properties just by doing one tensile test. Okay. You can get elastic modulus, you can get yield point or yield strength, or you can get UTS, ultimate tensile strength, or you can get fracture strength. Okay. Some other properties which you can get from this tensile test, one is called ductility, okay, important for a metallurgical engineer. Okay. That tells you that what is the maximum strain experienced by the material before fracture. Okay. So, basically this is the total strain experienced by the material before fracture, and this is another material, in which case whatever is the maximum strain experienced by the material before fracture. Okay. So, I can easily tell you that the ductility of this material, let us say call it as A here and let us call it as B here. So, ductility of A is more than ductility of B, material A is more ductile. Then there are some two important properties again, one is called resilience, okay, and that is the energy absorbed by material, okay, when you are deforming elastically, and of course, because elastic deformation is reversible, this material this energy will be dissipated during the unloading cycle. Okay. So, this is what is resilience, as you can see in curve A. Okay, the up to this elastic part, whatever is the area under the curve, okay, that will be the resilience. Okay. So, this much energy the material is going to take, but because this is elastic deformation, it can be recovered. Of course, it will be recovered in form of heat afterwards. In case of material B, the resilience is up to this point, because the strength is more in this, yield strength is more. Okay. So, you can see that the resilience has increased in this material. So, this material will be more resilient. Then another property is called toughness, the ability of material to absorb energy in the plastic range. Okay. So, this is for elastic range. So, whatever is the remaining stressed area under the stress strain curve. Okay. So, for example, for this material A, okay, if I want to draw the, sorry, it will be like this area and so on. Okay. So, this much area is under the curve A. So, that will be the toughness. Similarly, in case of material B, this much will be the area under the curve where the plastic deformation is there. So, this much will be the toughness of the material B. Okay. So, now you can see it is the area which we are comparing. In this case strength is more, but ductility is less. In this case strength is less, ductility is more. Okay. So, it depends upon the area, how much area it is covering, but in general I can say from this two curve that toughness of A is more than toughness of B. The reason is that ductility of also A is more than ductility of B. Okay. And area, in terms of area also, you can just qualitatively say that area under this curve is more than area under this curve. So, in this particular case, the ductility of A is more than ductility of B, and toughness also of A is more than toughness of B. Okay. So, it is not always true that if ductility is more, the toughness will be more, it depends upon the area which is under the curve. So, in this case it looks like the area under the curve for material A will be more than the B. So, toughness of material A is more than the toughness of material B. Okay. So, this is the basically the energy material can take before fracture, okay, in the plastic range. So, the ability of material to absorb energy in the plastic range, and you can say before fracture. Okay. Very important in some materials. Okay. For example, if you are designing an automobile or you are want to select a material for automobile, okay, how much energy it is going to take, suppose there is some kind of impact before it fails. Of course, in that case we call it as impact toughness, not only toughness. Okay. We will come to that later on. Then there can be different behavior, brittle or ductile of the material. Okay. So, what do we mean by brittle fracture, brittle behavior or ductile behavior? Okay. In case of brittle material which is showing brittle behavior, okay, so the fracture will occur almost at the elastic limit. Okay. So, it may not even see this plastic part, the fracture will take place somewhere here. Okay. If it is a completely brittle material, for example, glass. Okay. Glass is a brittle material, if you just apply some stress, it will fracture into parts. Okay. And this will happen without showing you any plastic deformation, it will be under elastic part itself. Okay. In metals, again we call some metals as brittle metal, okay, but in brittle metals you slightly see some plasticity before fracture. So, it is not in metals, it is not going to fail in the elastic limit itself. Some plastic deformation you will see and then it will fracture, okay. So, it is in case of some brittle metals. Glass of course is a different class of material, okay. In that case you will see the fracture in the elastic limit itself. Ductile material fracture after undergoing considerable plastic strain, okay, and this is what is ductile material, okay. So, considerable plastic strain will be there or deformation will be there. So, area under the curve will be obviously more for the ductile material, okay, absorbed energy will be more. So, you can also say that toughness of the ductile material will be more. Nowadays in glass also lot of research is going on to make it tough, okay. Sometime you must have seen on the windshield of the automobile toughened glass, okay. So, they are trying to increase the toughness of the glass also, so that it can take maybe if something some small stone or something comes and hit the windshield, it should not fracture in those situations, okay. And your mobiles, smartphones, okay, all those glasses are toughened glasses, okay. They are very hard and very they are toughened, so that if you apply accidentally, if you apply some stress also, the idea is that it should not crack, okay. So, these are toughened glass, and then they are giving very specific names to them. There are some very specific glasses, Gorilla 2, Gorilla 3 and so on, okay. So, a lot of research is going on in the improving the property of glass and making it tough. Problem with brittle failure is that fracture is that it is catastrophic. So, it does not give prior warning. So, what prior warning you can get if it is not brittle is, the prior warning is you can get a plastic deformation, okay. So, suppose you have designed a structure and the material you have used is brittle, for example, and suppose due to some unforeseen reason there is very high load on your structure and you did not design it for that kind of load. What will happen if it is a brittle material? It will just fracture, okay. And suppose there are humans who are using that particular structure, there will be a lot of damage to human lives. But if it is a brittle material, if it is a ductile material, suppose now if you put this kind of load, what will happen is that it will first deform, okay. And this deformation is very easily, because this is a kind of very clearly you can notice this kind of deformation, okay. So, before failure you will be able to see, okay, this particular structure is now there is a sag in the beam or whatever, okay. So, there is some plastic deformation in that and you can take some corrective measure before any accident takes place, okay. So, that is why having some kind of plastic deformation in the material is required, though a mechanical engineer or design engineer is not going to use his material in that range, okay. He is going to use that material in the elastic range itself. But it gives him confidence that if because of any reason in the service, if the load increases beyond the design load, the material is not going to fracture, it will show some plastic deformation and that can be easily noticed and it can be corrected. Just a comment on, sometime we get confused between fracture and failure, okay. To kind of have separate compartment for both these terms. So, failure can be defined differently depending upon application, okay. I can say failure can be defined in a very broad sense, okay, and people can use failure in different contexts. For example, a design engineer define failure as yielding, okay, because design engineer always like to design his structure within the elastic limit. In fact, there also he takes lot of factor of safety. So, much below the yield point he will design such that the stress in the structure remains much below the yield point, Okay. So, if because of any reason the material deform plastically, then for him that is a failure of material. Material should not have yielded. Okay. For a metallurgical engineer on the other hand, he can define the failure as necking. Okay. So, metallurgical engineer do lot of all the processes which we use in metallurgical engineering are in plastic deformation only, through plastic deformation only. For example, if you want to do forging, you will have to do plastic deformation, change the shape. If you want to do rolling, you have to reduce the thickness of the sheet, okay, by rolling, or you can do extrusion. All these processes depend upon plastic deformation. So, for a metallurgical engineer, the material is good if it is showing a lot of plastic deformation or lot of ductility, because that is how he processes the material. So, for him the failure is if suppose locally at some location there is a non-uniform deformation, not exactly necking, but non-uniform deformation. Okay. So, for him that is a failure, because the cross sectional area of the sheet or any bar or something like that will reduce in that particular section. So, it is a failure. So, I can say fracture is a failure, okay, but failure of material not necessarily means fracture. Okay. Fracture is another type of failure, and what happens in fracture, that is what is shown here. Fracture is when material fragments into two part or multiple part also, whereas failure is can be yielding, can be necking, can be fracture, etc. So, a lot of different things can be failure, but fracture is very clear that my material has to fragment. Okay. It has to be in two parts, or it can be in multi-part parts also, okay, but there has to be some discontinuity in the material in the form of that there have to be two separate parts. So, that is my fracture. Now, on this type of tensile curves, okay, I can do this tensile test at room temperature, okay, I can do this tensile test at high temperature. Okay. So, when you do at high temperature, of course, with some different type of test we do that, okay. But in general what happen when you do at high temperature, what is the effect of temperature is that strength decreases and ductility increases. So, this is the general behavior you will see when we increase the temperature. Of course, there will be some other metallurgical process taking place when you are doing at high temperature. These are precipitation can be there, aging can be there, okay, all these things we have already seen, or recrystallization can be there, okay, which may alter this behavior, that may be strength may not increase or decrease or whatever. But in general strength decreases and ductility increases with increase in temperature, and that is why all the metallurgical processes also we try to do at high temperature, hot forming, hot forging, hot rolling and so on. So, basically why understanding effect of temperature is important, that is for material processing, all the processes we do at under hot condition. Of course, not always, but at least in initial part when we want to impose large deformation, all these processes are done under hot condition. So, I should understand that what is the effect of temperature on the stress strain curve of a material. Another very important application of temperature on the stress strain curve of a material is creep strength. Okay. For a higher temperature application, we need creep strength of the material. Okay. Of course, the way we do the test is slightly different than how we do in the tensile test, but the important part here is that the temperature is the factor which is important to consider here. The example where you will have this temperature effect is where we use material for gas or steam turbine or boiler material and so on. Wherever temperature is involved, okay, I need to know what is the behavior of material as a function of temperature. Then there can be change in the material behavior as a function of strain rate also. Okay, and what is strain rate? Strain rate is strain per unit time. Okay, and that will be dependent on the when I was discussing the tensile machine. I said I can move the crosshead with different velocity. So, if I am doing it at a high velocity, that means I am having high strain per unit time, that means I am doing at high strain rate. If I am having a low velocity, then my strain per unit time will be small and my strain rate will be low. So, study of mechanical properties at high strain rate comes under impact loading. Okay. Again, the way we do the test can change, we will have other type of equipment than tensile test, but when we have high strain rate type of deformation, then it is a it comes under impact kind of loading or impact kind of deformation behavior. Important property to evaluate the impact toughness. So, basically we want to know that how much energy is absorbed by the material, okay, during the impact. For example, in as I told you in automobiles, this is a very important property for a material to have, that how much energy it is going to absorb during the impact, because that is what is going to save the occupant of that particular car or automobile. Okay. If it absorbs more energy, then it will transmit less energy into the cabin, okay, and you will be saved. Nowadays, if you see some automobile advertisement, they actually tell you that they are using very high strength steels. Okay. So, to improve the crash worthiness of the material. So, those material will be able to absorb more energy during deformation. Impact toughness is basically energy absorbed by material before fracture during impact loading. Example, material experiencing crash or armor materials also have to have good impact toughness. Then there is another property which is not actually comes under the tensile test, it is a very different property, but important one which we will see in detail later on, and that is basically to resistance to deformation by indentation or scratch. Okay. So, in this case we do not do the deformation of the whole material, we do a deformation of a very localized region by some indenter, okay, and there we look at the deformation locally. So, basically we actually measure local property here, unlike bulk property obtained by tensile test, but it is a very important one to do a quick evaluation of properties of material. So, you do different treatment and you want to have a quick understanding of that how the strength is changing, okay, you can do hardness, then you can go for tensile test. And because ease of testing, you can, this is a very important property to evaluate. Okay. So, this is what we have to discuss today in the tensile test. Thank you.